And peace to you in the name of God the Creator, Christ the Redeemer, and the Spirit who sustains us. Amen. Being a person is hard. Not all the time. Sometimes it's easy, particularly for those of us who are privileged to have more than we need. But even then, when we're faced with a crisis, it can be challenging to figure out how to get through, to figure out what comes next. Hard and uncomfortable. Oftentimes, we operate from a scarcity mindset, the mindset that we have to hold on to what we have because we may not have enough later. We might wonder, do I have enough money to pay for my expenses and fund my retirement and do what I want to do? Can I give my family what they want? But it also comes out in other ways that we don't necessarily think about. Is my house or my car or my bank balance or my life impressive enough? Can I maintain that milestone that I reached in my career or in my bank account balance or in my friend or follower count on social media? More importantly, we tie our self-worth to these things. And we worry that if the answer is no, we don't have endless money. No, we'll never be impressive enough to meet some imaginary shifting goalpost. No, we can't maintain a certain bank account balance or social media account. Then we just aren't good enough. Even if we're not quite clear what it is we're not good enough for. The scarcity mindset is about holding on to what we think is important to us, or rather, what's important to us up to a point. And operating from a scarcity mindset is one of the things that makes being a person so hard. When a crisis hits, no matter what the crisis is, if we operate from a scarcity mindset, it can be incredibly difficult to move past the threats to our self-worth, making the crisis that much harder to navigate. Even when we don't operate from a scarcity mindset, crises are difficult to get through. Maybe we're trapped in a situation we need to get out of, whether it's an unhealthy marriage or friendship, a job or a career that is no longer as rewarding as it once was, or an addiction to substances, to gambling, even to shopping. Or maybe it's a disease or an injury that leaves us sapped of our strength or our abilities. Or maybe it's broader than that. A flood or a tornado, massive layoffs, a government shutdown that impacts the lives and livelihoods of federal workers. Or an escape from slavery in Egypt. By God's hand, the children of Israel have been delivered out of Egypt and they are struggling to survive. But for them, like so many people around the world, scarcity is more than a mindset. It is a reality. They are in the wilderness, lost, confused, and starving. And so they do what we so often do when faced with a crisis. They put on their rose-colored glasses and gaze with longing at Egypt in the rearview mirror. Why did we leave? Weren't we better off there? We should have just let God kill us there instead of bringing us out into the wilderness to starve to death. But as we have a tendency to do, they've forgotten about the harm they suffered under the Egyptians. They remember the hard work, but they appear to have forgotten the cruelty. They may have thought they wanted freedom, but what they didn't realize before they left Egypt is that freedom very rarely leads where we think it will. We may have daydreams that freedom will bring an immediate end to the crisis in our lives, and it will be smooth sailing from here on out. Our troubles will be over, and everything will be wonderful, and we can get on with the business of living. But that's not how it works. We almost inevitably find ourselves in the wilderness, if not in the immediacy of the crisis, then in the days or the weeks after. We can lose sight of where we are with no real sense of what the end of our story will be. The wilderness becomes our state of mind. But what we know from the story of Abraham and Isaac on the mountaintop, from Moses on Mount Horeb, from countless other stories in the Hebrew Bible, even from the life of John the Baptist and the testing of Jesus, is that the wilderness is the place where we draw closest to God. The wilderness, whether actual or metaphorical, is the place where we are at the lowest, where we face the fewest distractions, where the veil that separates us from God is the thinnest. And so we have two choices. We can embrace the wilderness. We can turn to God, letting down our guard, sharing our fears and our concerns. Or we can turn and run. We can let our resentments against God build an unbreachable wall until we are lost in the wilderness, trapping ourselves into a scarcity mindset that says this: I'm not good enough for God. God must not love me enough, or this wouldn't have happened. Or else, God would have saved me. That's a dangerous road to go down and a hard place to come back from, because if we stop sensing God's presence in the ordinariness of life, then we start denying that God has any hand in the extraordinary things that happen. And when we can't see the miraculous things that happen, even the tiny moment by moment, blink and you'll miss it miracles in the middle of a crisis, then we stop believing God is with us at all. But what we do know from the story of Israel is that when we complain, God listens. Even when we complain about God, God listens. And God is there. And God provides. God doesn't buy into this whole scarcity mindset, though. After all, God created the world and everything in it with an eye to abundance, that there would be enough for everyone. God doesn't alleviate the crisis or remove the suffering. They don't post neon signs with flashing arrows saying, "This way to the nearest exit from the wilderness." That's not what this is about. It's about deepening our own abundance mindset, about discerning what it is we really hunger for, trusting in God to care for us, connection with God and each other, discovering what our priorities are, what impact we want to make in the world, what legacy we want to leave behind us, how we want to touch the people we come into contact with. In the evenings, God gives the Israelites quail to eat. In the mornings, the desert is covered with manna, their daily bread. It's enough for each person to have what they need for the day. On the day before the Sabbath, God gives them enough for 2 days. But they have to do the work of gathering their food. It's not hard work, and miraculously, each person has enough, no matter how much or how little they gather. But it's not about the quail. It's not about the manna. In fact, manna translated into English means, what is it? It's a free gift from God. One that should not be overlooked just because we don't recognize it. Sometimes abundance is unrecognizable at first. But when we spend time in the wilderness, we can start to see that God's gifts aren't always packaged how we expect them to be. Manna is about God providing for the people out of God's abundance, continuing to bring about a new creation out of the ruins of what came before. And it's about the people learning over the course of 40 years to trust that God will continue to provide, that God will give them the law, and that they will learn to live into the freedom that they have been granted. And that freedom doesn't mean a fantasy of perfection and ease. Instead, that freedom comes with constraints. And those constraints include the responsibility to care for each other as God cares for us, to work to adopt an abundance mindset in place of a scarcity mindset, and to share with others out of our abundance. Manna, the what is it of our lives, is one of those things. We've all encountered manna at some point, the thing that when we first encountered it, we had no idea what it was, but over time we came to see that it was a great gift for us. Something that continued to feed us as long as we needed it. Maybe your personal manna is still feeding you. Maybe you, in turn, have fed someone else with your manna. Maybe that manna was literal food when you were hungry, a meal prepared for you when you needed it most. Maybe it is a word of hope that sustains you and gives you courage when you need it, or friendship in the place you least expected it. The manna economy is the perfect example of an abundance mindset. The idea that God makes available to us what we need for today. No matter what else is going on, in times of crisis and in times when everything is going well. And not only us, but our friends and neighbors and even our enemies will have enough. All we have to do is trust absolutely in God to provide, trust absolutely in God to provide that what we need will be available, whether that's food or shelter or comfort. So when the crisis does come, we know we are not alone. We know that God is with us, providing for us. And we know that our community, our friends and neighbors are with us too during our journey in the wilderness, as we will be there for them during their wilderness journeys.